interpretation.
What no one knows is while the countdown's going on, I'm making the Doug face with my hand up.
Notice we all stopped making the Doug face as soon as just in case Doug's here. Hi, Doug. Hi, Doug.
Hey, everybody. Welcome into the Storycraft Cafe. I am your host, Hank Garner, and today, co-driving with me, Abby Matthews. This is kind of a Hank and Abby day. I know Doug technically started the day off with whatever his workshop or whatever that was this morning. Whatever. But
we are the stars of the show today.
Obviously. And I was looking at the calendar the other day and I said, we really just scheduled this show with Julie on the busiest day of our year. And, I'm here for it because that just means that something exciting and relevant and magical is going to come out of this time.
If
so
anybody is going to crash this party and make it more excellent, it's Julie. So I'm really excited Julie's here.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome, Julie. Glad you could join us today.
Yeah, so glad to be here.
Yeah. So Julie, you are a book coach. What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, well, that means that I help status quo busting writers slay their doubt demons and get their novels or memoirs reader ready. So I see that as a little bit of cheerleading, a lot of strategy and craft support, and a little bit of project management too, because it can be a daunting process, not only to write a whole novel or memoir, but then revise it, figure out how to pitch, know when it's ready, all of those things, and to know when to bring in critique partners for feedback.
I told you were going to freaking love her after that. Like she busted out that slay your dragons.
Yeah, I'm just basking in the Julie-ness of all of that. That's do you have that written out? Is that like tacked on your monitor with a sticky note?
Oh, no, it's not, but I do. It is sort of my tagline. So I have it memorized for events such as these.
I love it. So, as a book coach who helps people slay those dragons and wrangle the mess that is our writer brain, in a lot of cases, where are people in their process when they bring Julie in to help the dragon slaying?
That's a great question. And really the answer is it depends. I do start with some people when they just have an idea for their very first project, all the way up to I have an agent or even an editor and I don't know what to do with their notes. Julie, can you help me? So I can really help end to end. And in fact, I really enjoy helping people with the pitching part of the process, pitching agents and or editors, just because it's a little bit different, a little bit more like analytical and strategic side of the brain instead of the more creative craft side. I think I really, really excel in taking writers that have done a lot of the pre-work already, have a pretty good idea how to write a novel, have done a few rounds of revisions, and get that novel or memoir to the next level so that it's actually ready to pitch. Because it's one of those weird things. Until you've written something that's actually ready or done, it's really hard to know what that feels like. And I remember distinctly realizing when many years ago when I wrote the book that got me my first agent, realizing, oh, this story is ready to go, and none of the ones that I had pitched previously were. Even though they had good things about them, they had great voice, or there were interesting ideas, they weren't fully baked. And I didn't have a sense, like sort of in my body and my mind, what that felt like until I had done it. And so if you're in that boat, I can help because I know what it looks like when something is actually ready, and I can help you decide if you're there or not, whether a little bit more revision is going to help, because it's hard to pitch and sell a book, right? It's really, really hard. So few people actually, that even of the people that have a reader ready book, so few of them actually are able to find traditional publication that that you don't want to mess up by sending it out in the world too soon. And although it's very common, I did it obviously, because if I was, I think on my, it was my third novel that got me my first agent. And so I had written and pitched other novels that were not ready. So learn from my mistakes and don't repeat them.
Well, you know, any artistic endeavor, writing included, is so subjective, or at least we like to tell ourselves. And it's so weird because it is and it isn't, because like you said, there was the novel that you had written that was ready, and then when you saw that, you could see where all the previous ones were not. Are there some hallmarks that you could point out, like this is a hallmark of a finished book, this is a hallmark of a book that's still in the throes? Like even though we're talking about something that is subjective, kinda, how do we quantify that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're right that it's subjective, because if you go look at any New York Times best-selling Oprah book club pick book, you'll find that it has like 0 and 1-star reviews of people that hated it, right? Because reading preference is part of the equation. And that's going to be true with agents and editors too. I'm sure they turn down books that are good because they're just not for them. Because if you're going to take on a book like that, you're taking on reading the book multiple times, right? Even me as a book coach, I have my preferred topics and genres and age categories, because I know when I work with a writer from beginning to end, I'm probably going to read the book 3 or 4 times. And I want to make sure that I love the idea enough that I'm in it for that long haul. And so just so that subjectivity is there, but there are some hallmarks. The main way that I like to describe it is, I think many people think of revision as, okay, I've written the whole story. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to correct all the typos. I'm going to put all the commas in the right place. I'm going to punctuate my dialogue, and poof, my story's done. But that is not what we're talking about, or at least not what I'm talking about when I talk about revision. I'm talking about deeply looking at the story and seeing whether we're using the language, the way we're drawing the character, the tension, the plot in the best possible way to tell the story that you have dreamed up in your head, right? Because the entire process of writing is translating this perfect idea that we have in our head into reality on the page, so that when you pick up the book and read it, you're getting sort of the same story that I had envisioned when I wrote it. And that can take a lot of work. So what I really am looking for when I, for example, do like a pitch package evaluation for someone, when they want to know the answer to the question, is this ready or not? I read the first 50 pages, I read the query, I read the synopsis. And what I'm looking for is, do the character plot and the plot arc come together in an arc? Which means that the character has something they're trying to achieve, something from their backstory that's keeping them from achieving it. And are they doing things in the plot that are going to force them to change so they can get that thing, so that they can make that change within themselves and get and achieve the story goal that they had? And so it's very possible to sort of like write a story that has an internal arc and a plot arc, but they're like, they don't come together. And that's I think that's the most common thing that I'm looking for. And then of course, have you set up the character in the right way? Have you started the story in action instead of with backstory or exposition, and all of those types of things? So so I think it is possible to tell. Another really important thing, and this is going to tie into when we talk about critique groups as well, is understanding the genre and age category conventions. So I work with a lot of middle grade and young adult authors, and understanding how the voice works, what the difference is between a middle grade story, a YA story, and an adult story. There are some sort of thematic differences. That can be really important too, because you could have a story where the plot and the character arc do come together and where you've done all of that work, but if the voice isn't right for middle grade, it's never going to sell, right? Because that voice is so important. Abby writes middle grade, so you know how this is, right? It has to actually sound like a 12-year-old kid, not like an adult, imagining what a 12-year-old kid is thinking about, even though that, of course, that's exactly what we're doing.
An
But the
important
more that
distinction.
the more you can immerse yourself really in that child's voice or in that teen voice in YA. And we've probably all read books where it sounds like an adult approximating what a teenager or a middle school aged kid sounds like, and it doesn't work as well. And kids, that won't fly with kids.
What's the meme that goes around where I don't know what movie it's from, but Steve Buscemi is like dressed as a teenager and he's got a skateboard over his shoulder and he's like, "Hello, kids," you know. He's like obviously 40 years old, you know. Yeah, you don't want to be that.
I'm cool.
Yeah, you don't want to be that guy in the
Right.
middle grade bookshelf.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So those are kind of the key things: the voice, the way the plot and the character come together, and really understanding your genre. For example, if you're writing a thriller or a mystery, that dead body or that crime happens in the first chapter, and whereas in other types of stories, it may that sort of inciting incident happens much later. So that's another thing that it's important to understand. And that comes from reading in whatever you're writing. So, if you're writing YA and the last YA novel you read was like Flowers in the Attic, like you gotta do some more reading because the publishing industry has changed, right?
Yeah.
And when we're looking for critique partners, we're also looking for people that are familiar with our genre and age category. So if you are I write a lot of speculative fiction, fantasy, and sci-fi, and if my critique partners were not familiar with that, they would be like, what even? How do I give you advice on this dragon that just appeared on the page? And like, I don't understand. I didn't read all of the books that came before that have dragons in them, so I don't understand the genre conventions and that sort of thing. So it's important for you to understand those things, and it's important for the people that you're sharing your work with to know that as well.
Gotcha. All right. So much to take in. It's that time of year where people are writing first drafts of novels that this has kind of become ingrained in the writer community. In the fall, we write novels, we write new novels, thanks to the legacy of NaNoWriMo and everyone who's taking that legacy forward now. We dabble with our 60-day writing challenge. Still time for you to sign up. Go dabbleU.com and get signed up for that. When you're writing a first draft, a lot of people will have writers groups where they use people to bounce ideas off of, to encourage one another. We have a cohort of writers that we're running right now where we are trying to encourage each other and learn together how to finish a draft. That to me feels very different than a critique group. Can you try to help us lay out the landscape of what the different support groups, if we can use that word, that writers can employ in different stages of writer development? There seems to be a writer group, critique group, which should serve a very different purpose, I would think, and then on through your journey. But how do you see the distinctions in the roles that these different groups serve?
Yeah, that's such a good question, because the truth is, as much as I'm a proponent for having critique groups and having critique partners, people getting more eyes on your pages, you can get them too early and it can really, really discourage you. If you're nurturing a little baby idea and somebody is like, "Oh, I don't really like that," or "I don't get what you're doing," it can crush you, right? It can really crush you. So I have a couple of suggestions in that arena. you might have guessed just in the few minutes that we've been on that I am a raging extrovert in a mostly introverted industry. And so I get very lonely if I'm just sitting here at my computer writing my stories all day long. My characters can keep me company to a certain extent, and then I need to be out in the world with actual people. So I really, really recommend having that group of writer friends that are either local or online, that are just friends, just like you said, a support group. So I've been doing this for a while, so I have a wide range of critique folks, and I do have my small group of people that I will share a messy first draft with, and they know when I say this is a messy first draft, that the only kind of feedback that I want are two things. Number one, brainstorming. Oh, this reminds me of this book. Have you read it for a potential comp title? Oh, it'd be cool if you did blah, 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 like this group. No critique, no criticism, only cheerleading. I love this. Look more at this. That type of feedback, that can be really encouraging when you're at this stage. Like if you all are out there thinking, I'm signing up in the next 60 days, I'm going to write my first novel. Definitely looking for that kind of cheerleading is what you're looking for, not somebody who is going to deep dive into your story and help you make it better, because nothing's going to arrest that creative process faster than getting feedback too early, right? So I think once the novel is done, and once you've taken a pass through it to make sure that it holds together, that you filled in sort of all the places, like if you have put notes to yourself, research this type of tree, or this piece of history, or this location, or this technology, research this later. When you filled in all of those blanks and you feel like you have a story that mostly hangs together and you've done everything to it that you can think of to do it, that's a great time to find that same group of cheerleaders and find which ones of them are reading and writing the same genre and age category you are, and then to get that deeper level of support.
So Stephen King, in his book on writing, talks about when you're writing the first draft. I think the metaphor he uses is writing with the door closed. It's you in the book, and no one outside of you and your keyboard has any say, and you get to tell the story the way you want to tell it. After that first draft is done, after you've put it in a drawer for 6 weeks, I think is what he recommends, and then you pull it back out, and then you open that door. And that's where, after you go through an edit, then you open the door to outside feedback. Is this resonating with people? Is it, all the things that you do? Does that kind of resonate with you, that the two segments of the process, that in the first draft, you're not really looking for outside input because that can be the dream killer and all of that. But there is a point where you invite feedback.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice way to put it. I will admit that I do open the door during my first draft to trusted people that I know well, and so
people.
Yeah, and I do enjoy brainstorming. I tend to use as my planning document. Some people use outlines or different types of planning documents. I use a messy synopsis, which is just like a long form synopsis that says all the different things that happen. And I really like to take that to some of my longtime writer buddies who are good at structure and good at how that plot and character come together, to brainstorm with me, because one of the things that I find that I always need to do is add more complications. Like my first idea is just a little bit too linear. You go from A, B, C in a straight line, and what you really want is more of a winding path from A to B to C. And so they can help me find those places to complicate without overcomplicating, right? Because that's the other end of the spectrum, is you write something that's so complex that it's actually going to take you 5 books to get to the end of what should just be one book. And so you have to pull out some of those complications. So again, I think you can definitely think of that, what I like to call not even a first draft, but the zero draft, like this initial draft draft where you're telling yourself the story,
Right.
to think of that as you're just experimenting with all the different story elements. And maybe you want some help from some trusted writer friends, and maybe you don't. Maybe you need to just go close that door. And I think a big part of this process is figuring out what works for each of us individually as writers, because everybody's a little bit different. There are definitely writers that would no way would they show an early draft or an early outline or synopsis to somebody else. And there are other people who really rely on that process, and knowing what's going to make you feel the most energy and be able to finish the project is the most important thing.
When I think one good way to think about receiving feedback from a critique partner would be to look at what it means to be a good critique partner. So how we can help someone, and the feedback we're willing to give someone may help to inform the feedback that we expect to get back from other people. If someone asks you to be a critique partner, to read their manuscript and to give their feedback or your feedback on it, as someone who encourages this and coaches this, what feedback would you encourage someone to give to another writer?
That's also a great question, because
I'm
I
full
think
of them
there's I think there's a real difference between what could be constructive criticism and what can be just pointing out every single flaw and shooting down ideas, right?
Mhm.
So I think that when people have first started out in a critique partner relationship, when they're new to critiquing in general, they're going to mark every missing comma, every typo, every place where there's two spaces instead of one, everything that they can possibly think of that could be a better description, a better turn of phrase, because they're not confident yet in themselves
Mhm.
as a critiquer. And what is really helpful for most writers at the early stages, I'm not talking about somebody who's already published 5 books or already
Yeah.
has an agent or but like somebody who's trying to publish their first book. We're really looking at the big picture, and does the plot and the character come together in the right way, and does the story feel right for genre? And so trying to step back as a critiquer and give that big picture feedback is really, really important. And so is identifying what's positive, because maybe it's easier to mark the 3 turns of phrase that feel a little clunky or could be
Mhm.
better, but it's really helpful for a writer to know, oh, wait, I really love this part, or the emotions are great here. Ooh, this made me laugh out loud, because then it helps the writer see what they're doing right, and then they can do more of that. And then maybe you point out a few things that they could do better, but again, in a constructive way. I'm always trying to think, as I'm critiquing for my critique partners, or when I'm coaching, how would I feel if somebody said this to me about my own writing?
Right.
And I really try to temper what I'm saying, because it's easy to just be like, wrong, 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 wrong. No, it takes a little bit more time to say, I think I see what you're trying to do here. Would it be better if you tried this other thing? And to not just correct and be like, do it this way instead, but ask questions that let the writer decide how to address the issue in their own way, right? Because everybody has, again, this perfect idea in their head of what they're trying to do with the
Mhm.
story, and you might read it and misinterpret because it's not quite there yet on the page. And if you ask open-ended questions, then they can answer those questions in the way that is true to the heart of their story, instead of true to what you think their story should be. And that will build a better trusting relationship too, so that you can be confident that when they're reading your pages, they're also looking for, what is she trying to do with this story, and how can I help her achieve that, instead of just like, I'm going to show how smart I am, I'm going to mark every single typo in this
Mm.
thing, and then you're going to feel terrible when you get back a totally bloody document, and you have no idea what to do next, except you feel like throwing the whole thing out and starting
Yeah.
over.
Well, I think the great 20th century philosopher Mary Poppins told us that a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down.
Mhm.
Start by saying what you liked about it, and that will go a long way to lowering barriers and helping to get those points across, because everybody wants to hear what you liked about the book first off. We'll talk about what's wrong with it later. Tell me what you liked about it, right?
Well, I think there's something powerful in that phrase. I see what you're trying to do here.
Yes.
Because there's an acknowledgement of, hey, you have something you're trying to say. You have a story that you're trying to tell. I see what it is. Maybe you need this piece to make it more clear, as opposed to feeling like I've done something that was wrong or bad, or like I need to just erase it. So,
yeah.
Right. And nobody achieves that perfect vision that's in their head on the first draft. Like, I love listening to Barbara Kingsolver is one of my favorite authors. I love listening to her talk about her revision process, because she will talk about going in with a scalpel word by word and changing things. And she's written all of these amazing novels, that have won every award that's out there. And she's still deeply revising and working years on these drafts. So it's not like you get to a certain level and then you're cranking out a first draft that's perfect and can just go straight to your editor. All of these authors that are sitting on our bookshelves that are writing the stories that we love are deeply engaging in revision. And so understanding that is very freeing, because it's not, like Abby said, it's not like you did something wrong. This is part of the process. Shannon Hale describes the first draft. She's a great kidlit author. The first draft is dumping sand into the sandbox. And then in revision, you shape it into the sand castles that are going to be your story. And I love that, because then the idea of dumping, it's messy. If you're going to try to write a 50,000 word novel in the next 60 days, it's going to be messy. It's going to have problems. It's going to need revision, but that's okay. It's still a huge accomplishment to write an entire story, full stop. And to write a full story in 60 days is also a great accomplishment. And I love fast drafting like this for the motivation to just let your creativity flow and just get it down on the page so that you can go back and start revising. But don't get to the end of the 60 days and start sending queries on December 1st, right? Like, please don't do that.
Stop. give yourself a little bit. Let's talk about just for a moment choosing the right critique partners, because if you write science fiction and you are asking a person who writes or only reads traditional romance, they're probably not going to get what you're trying to say. The whole premise of your story is not going to make sense to them. It might even agitate them, because it's not what they like to read, and their feedback is going to be colored by that. And so I would think that first and foremost, choose the right critique partners. How do you go about making sure that the people that you're asking for feedback from are going to give you constructive feedback and feedback that's actionable, as opposed to just saying, I don't like this. This was a waste of my time.
Well, the first thing that I'm always looking for in a client or in a critique partner is someone who reads widely in the genre that they're writing, right? Reading is the best learning tool for writing, just absorbing all different kinds of stories, both in your genre and outside your genre. I actually think it's really good to read broadly, but also at the core, you have to read in the genre and age category you're writing for. So if you don't read romance and are trying to write romance, you won't understand all the tropes that the readers are expecting and that they're really familiar with. And then it'll be really easy either to disappoint them or to think that you've done something really fresh and new that they've never seen before. Like, oh, I have these two people and they hate each other and they're going to fall in love. That's really fresh. Nobody's ever done that before. No, it's an entire category, my favorite, of romance, hate to love. So you have to understand like what's already on the shelf in that genre in order to be sure that what you are writing is a fresh take on something. So I would definitely look for somebody who's a reader, who's reading in, even if they're not writing the genre or age category that you're writing, they should be reading it. So for example, I have a critique group, a long time critique group that meets on Tuesdays. We have people who are writing picture books, middle grade, YA, and adult. And we've all been together for a long time. But we all read all of the things that each other are writing. And so we read those genres. So it makes it easier for us to work together. And if somebody doesn't, then they can say, I'm not really sure because I don't write as much sci-fi as you do, Julie, but I wonder about this. And just being aware that like, maybe I don't know as much as I think I do because I'm not as familiar with the genre. But again, like we've been together for many years for multiple books and we've built up that trust. But if you're looking for a new group, like if you're out there in the Dabble community right now, trying to find some like-minded writers, I would be looking for people that are writing similar genre and age category to you. And then it's really personality fit, right? There are plenty of people who are my dear writing friends that I don't necessarily trade with, either because we don't write the same genre, or because we're just not like really well suited, or we're not really at the same stage of our writing journey, and that's all fine, right? Like everybody is not going to be a perfect critique partner match for you, and it's good to have a wide range of writer friends, and to be a good literary citizen. But finding a handful of those trusted people that will read your words will help your writing get better for sure.
So let me ask you this, because as you were talking there, I just got this idea in my mind that a lot of times, especially people that are indie authors, will friend other authors on social media and whatnot, and get a lot of support there. But they make the mistake that when they publish their book, they're advertising to their author friends, and those are not the people that are going to read your book. Typically, you need to find readers, and that's who you should be marketing to. Market to readers, not other writers. I know that's a quibble, but I think it holds out. Should your critique partners that you're looking for, should they be writers? Should you be looking for readers who read widely in what you're writing and know what they like? Like, is there a difference between soliciting other writers for critique partners, or are you looking for people that just are immersed in the genre as readers? And does that distinction matter?
So I think you actually want both. So
Okay.
I would consider critique partners to almost exclusively be other writers.
Okay.
And then there's a separate category, which is beta readers. And those can be people that are just like, your neighbor who loves to read romance, and would be a great reader to read the last draft of your romance before you send it out on submission, that sort of thing. And those people, it doesn't matter if they write, as long as they read in the genre. I will say that a lot of people make the mistake of, oh yeah, I had 5 beta readers. I had my best friend, my sister, my mom, my auntie, and my daughter.
Those are not beta
read the book.
readers.
And of course, that's great for cheerleading. I do know a few people who get actually very good feedback from their moms. So if you're a mom that's out there that gives really good feedback, more power to it. But my mom is only going to say, this is amazing. This is the best thing I've ever read. So that's not going to help me.
You and I had very different moms. Just gonna say that.
My mom won't even read it until it's published. That's what she says. So
Don't bother
I
me,
mean,
kid.
yeah, right. That's so it's important to have someone who's it's not that they have to be complete strangers,
Yeah,
but it might be worth considering whether having beta readers that have a little bit of distance so that they would be clear on that they can give you feedback without hurting your feelings, sort of thing. That can be really important. And I do think that it's good to network with other writers broadly, like what you were mentioning. But
mhm,
what you don't want to do, I was just talking, I have a group coaching program called the Story Matters Mentorship, and I have a client whose book is coming up really soon. And so we were talking about marketing on our coaching call
yeah,
yesterday. And I was like, you don't want to be that writer where, like, in the 6 months before your book comes out, every social media post, every newsletter, everything is like, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. You have to say
right.
something else other than buy my book, because it doesn't actually work
Mhm,
to say buy my book. You have to give a compelling reason to buy a book. And of course, I'm not saying don't market yourself. Obviously, we all have to do that, no matter whether we're
sure.
indie published or traditionally published. Book marketing is a thing that has to happen. But communicating and connecting with readers goes a step beyond saying buy my book and putting a sales link in. It's about connecting with people, providing fun insights. Readers love to see the behind the scenes of what happened, or hear about the writing process, or see a deleted scene, or a little side story about a character. And those kinds of things can really help build that readership.
Gotcha. Abby, I feel like I'm monopolizing Julie, so feel free to jump in.
no,
Is there anything that
go for
you
it.
okay.
No,
Um,
so we do have a question though in the chat, Hank. This might be
popped
a
up.
great
Yep,
place to put it
yeah.
in. So NJ wants to know, would a critique partner be more in the alpha reader stage or the beta reader stage? Where
That's
would you slide
exactly
them in?
what I was gonna ask next. You mentioned beta readers earlier,
Mhm.
and you kind of made a distinction. I think you said send them your last draft before sending it on submission. So should you think of beta readers as kind of I've done my critiquing. This is kind of where it stands after other people have looked at it. Like, how do you see the difference in those stages of critique and revision?
Yeah. So one of the things that I say all the time that writers do not want to hear is that there's usually more than one round of revision. There's usually more
Oh
than
yeah.
two rounds of revision. There are often more than 3, 4, or 5 rounds of revision to get something really reader ready. And so what that means is that you might have that alpha stage where you send to your beta readers and you do a big revision, and you might need to go back to more critique partners to get more feedback, because you
Mhm.
might think like, I think I addressed most of this, but I'm not 100% sure. So I'm going to send it back to probably different critique partners, because you can only have fresh eyes really the first time you read through a story. So say you do a couple rounds of that and you think you're pretty confident. I'm ready to go. I send it to my beta readers, and then they don't get it, or they think the whole middle is really slow. I have a stoplight method of beta reader feedback that I have writers use when they're going out to beta readers, which is color coding instead of doing like line level edits, because you don't want to ask somebody to do line edits on an entire manuscript. It takes forever. So when they're beta reading, color coding can really work. Green if you love it. Yellow if you are not really sure what's going on or it doesn't feel like it makes sense, and red if you're completely confused. So if you send it out to beta readers and you get back a lot of yellow and red, you've obviously, something's not quite working right. And you might end up going back to your critique partners for help brainstorming, like to
Mhm.
figure out what happened here. I thought that I had done X. It's not reading that way on the page. How do I fix it? So I do think there can be critique partners on either side. And a book coach can fit in there as well, right? Like
Mhm.
if I help somebody plan a novel, I don't tend to read first draft pages, because again, I think people then are very worried about correcting typos and not thinking big picture about story. So I'll get them to the end of the story, and then we'll work on the revision together. And then they might go out to beta readers and or critique partners and come back to me with their feedback if they're not quite sure what to do about it. Or if they send it to 3 readers and they get 3 different sets of feedback, I can really help figure out what is the underlying cause for the 3 different sets of feedback, because it's really frustrating to get something back that says, like, this is paced way too fast. This is paced way too slow. Okay, well, which one is right? It's the same story, right? And that actually happened to me once in a contest where we got feedback. Send the first chapter of our manuscript and you'll get line edits back from the judges. So I get line edits back on my first chapter, and one judge said, this is paced way too fast. And the other one said, this is paced way too slow. And the truth is, they were both right. And I had a character motivation problem that was making it seem really slow to them, to the one reader, and making it seem really paced too quickly because I wasn't answering enough questions. And so, like, they were both right, even though they were saying opposite things. And I was able to figure that out, but it can be really frustrating the first couple times you go through that process.
Yeah, they were reporting the effect and not highlighting the cause. It's your job to take everyone's effects and find what the cause is. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, honestly, sometimes you're going to get some feedback and you're going to be like, oh, they didn't really understand what I was trying to do with this story. And I'm going to put that feedback aside. I encourage people to really spend some time thinking about that before they make that call, so that they're not just being like, I don't want to revise anymore, so I'm not going to listen to this feedback. And but instead to be really clear that, no, I've considered this feedback and it is feedback about a different type of story than the story I'm writing. And that takes a lot of confidence and a lot of real clarity on what your story is about and how it fits in with the market and the genre, right? So that's something that's really hard to do when you're writing your first novel, and something that that I think critique partners, writing friends, and book coaches can really, really help you with.
Oh my gosh. Do you know how many times I've gotten back a developmental edit and I read it the first time and it's just like, I feel gutted. I feel angry. I go through like the whole range of emotions.
They don't understand my genius.
Diva, and I'll put it away and I'll walk away for a week, maybe 2 weeks. And then I'll go back and read that same ding dong letter. And I'll be like, what was I thinking? They weren't saying that at all. And it's like, you have to have a little bit of distance from it. Sometimes you have to let it sit to process it before you can see what it is they're really saying, and not just that surface.
It's so true. I have a blog post about the 7 stages of writerly grief when you get feedback. And the first one, every time, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and I really, really deeply trust my critique partners. And still, when they send me something, I'm like, they hate me. They didn't get it at all. What? This is terrible. How did they totally miss what I was trying to do here? They didn't see my genius, right? And then I step away, and after a few more read throughs, I get to the point where I'm like, they're 100% right. Now I've got to roll up my sleeves and get to work. And so I always tell, when I send feedback, I always say, don't respond right away. Take 24, 48, 72 hours, maybe a week. Think about this before you respond, because if you see my edit letter and you respond in the heat of the moment, you might regret what you say there. And you might feel differently if you wait a little while longer. Yeah.
I always say I give myself space to be a diva, and then I have to be a gangsta, and I have to just get.
That's so true. Yeah, I mean, feel the feelings. Don't stuff them down, because that doesn't help either. Like, we never send stuff out in the world until we think it's like at least good enough for somebody to look at. And so when they're coming back and saying, this isn't quite working yet, that is hard. And I do want to acknowledge that and validate that. These are our beautiful little story babies. And nobody likes to hear that their story babies are ugly, right? Which is why you want to say it really nicely when you're like, hey, this story baby is kind of ugly. You need to do some work on it to make it beautiful, right? You want to say that very nicely, because we don't like to hear that. But it's also a really, really important way to get better, is to understand how readers are responding to what we've written, so that we can make sure that that's the response we want them to have.
Yeah. Well, and just remember that most babies start off looking like Winston Churchill
Correct.
and then grow into, beautiful people. Stories are the same,
They're like Benjamin Button, right? They start, they get prettier as they go along.
Right. We've gotten a couple of comments / questions I want to pop up here just a second, and both of these kind of run together. So Emerald says, what is the difference between having beta / alpha readers and using ARC readers? And then Bon says, so is the critique partner there to read for understanding and not grammar / syntax / typos? And I grabbed an ARC off of my shelf. This is Peter Swanson's book, Kill Your Darlings, from a couple of years ago. But one thing, it'll say uncorrected proof at the top. That doesn't mean that this book hasn't been edited. It means that it's uncorrected for typos, misspellings. This book is in its final form, except for commas, periods, misspellings, little,
So funny you say that, Hank, because I put that on the cover of my ARCs because you told me about it, and it had not been to the proofreader yet.
Yeah.
And I sent it off, and one of my parents, like friends from when I was a young child, they live on a farm, they have grandkids the right age to read the book. I sent them the ARC, and she wrote back the cutest message. And she was like, okay, so in chapter 3 on page whatever, on the 3rd paragraph, like, I think you need a typo on this sentence. And then she had like 5 or 6 of those. And I wrote back, oh, Mindy, thank you so much. I said, I guess I didn't make it clear. I was like, it's at the proofreader right now. I said, but I had to get it printed to give you enough time to read it, to be able to write a review and have that there and out in the world and ready for the launch. And so I think a lot of people, when they aren't writers, they don't, and obviously people who are writers too, were like, well, wait a minute, what is supposed to happen at that stage? So
yeah.
Right. So those ARC or review copies are out there in order to get those early reviews, to get trade reviews. Like if you see something that has a Publishers Weekly star or a Kirkus review or something like that, those are those trade reviews that really help get books into libraries, for example, and get them put forward for awards and stuff like that. So you put that they're uncorrected because they haven't been through the final proofread yet. But those are not copies that we're asking for feedback on, right? Those have been through all of the developmental edit stages, all of the line edit stages, and they're really in mostly final format.
Yeah.
So I think a critique partner, you don't want to rely on your critique partner for grammar or syntax typos, right? So, I mean, I used to do back before I became a book coach, I did do copy editing for business, but also a little bit for fiction and nonfiction. And I can do that. I hate it. I don't do that anymore because I like to work on developmental editing. So that sort of that proofreading, copy editing skill set is a totally different skill set than reading for plot and character. And usually you'll have both, a book coach and critique partners that are working on developmental things. And then whether you're self-publishing or traditional publishing, by all means, spend the money on a copy editor, because they will catch things that your eyes will glaze over because you've read the book 500 times. And that's honestly why I don't do copy editing anymore, is because I get caught up in the story, and I'm thinking about the big picture, and then I'm missing the missing comma. So I can copy edit a query letter, a synopsis in the first chapter or something like that, and make sure there's really no typos in that. But you don't want me to do an entire manuscript. You want to get someone who is an actual copy editor to do that. And the same is true for your critique partners. It's a lot to ask for somebody to read a whole novel that you've written. And it's even more to ask if you're also asking them to copy edit.
Yeah. Well, and you don't want your critique partner worrying about misspellings, punctuations. on a passage that you might rewrite or scrap or delete. Like, what a waste of time, what a waste of time and their valuable resources. Just, that's why it's at the end of the process. When all the overhauling is done, that's when you worry about the, putting the fresh coat of paint, as as it were, with punctuation and spellings and all of that. Yeah.
So let me ask this question, because I have to say, I think I've always had a misunderstanding about what a critique partner actually is, because so it was a bunch of, okay, Julie, you know Michelle Hazen, and she's been on the podcast before, so our listeners might be sort of familiar with her. So she had a group of romance friends that she introduced me to at one point, and two of them said, oh yeah, we are each other's critique partners. We send each other our work chapter by chapter. I think what they really were accountability partners. I think what they were really doing, and this is what I thought a critique partner was I'm going to write a chapter and I'm going to send it to you so that I know someone is sitting and waiting for it, and they're going to read it and they're going to be like, that's great, keep going. And they're only going to tell you if there's some big glaring, like awful hole in it or something's just like way off. They're not really giving you a lot of nitpicky feedback. They're really just more like keeping you on task and keeping you going until you hit the end. But break down for us exactly what a critique partner is doing. Are they getting the whole manuscript? Are they getting half a manuscript? And you're swapping before you finish the second half? Like, what's the sort of process that they'd go through?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I do think that there is some overlap in the Venn diagram of critique partners, critique groups, accountability partners, accountability groups. And they all have their different uses, right? Like accountability, especially when you're doing something like this 60-day writer challenge, can be huge, because it can be easy to be like, oh, I'm just not going to tell anybody that I didn't write this week because I was binge watching, Only Murders in the Building instead of doing my writing. So having that accountability partner who's going to be like, hey, it's Friday, Julie, why didn't you send me my chapter? That can be really helpful. But you can also have a critique group where you're bringing chapters every week and you are doing that deep critique of looking at the big picture and deep reading the chapter. So it's a little bit of both, right? Like my critique group, we bring a chapter each week, and if I don't bring a chapter for a few weeks, I'll get a text message like, "You're bringing pages this week, Julie, right? Because you haven't brought anything for a little while." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I gotta get
Mom,
right."
So our group results to shame. Is that what I'm hearing?
Okay, listen, I'm going to tell you something very funny that I hope everybody will take this with the humor with which it's intended. My critique group is called the Shame Bells. So remember from Game of Thrones, Hannah Waddington's shame. Look, I have a literal bell. And so we say that with love. They're tiny little bells, and we ring them with much love. But we do call ourselves the Shame Bells because we will just gently ring the bell. So one of us will say, like, if I don't bring chapters next week, ring the shame bell for me. So it's kind of our little joke, because we're very not shame oriented. We're very support oriented, but we think it's hilarious. So hopefully you do too. And I didn't just out us as a bunch of weirdos, although we are a bunch of weirdos. So yeah, you can exchange chapter by chapter in a critique partner relationship, or you can do a full manuscript. In my same group, as we go chapter by chapter through a manuscript, like, okay, I'm writing an adult speculative project right now. It's going to be about 100,000 words when it's done. It would take forever for me to bring that a chapter at a time to a weekly critique group. So at a certain point, I just stopped. And then I'm like, I'm going to send you the whole thing when it's done. You've given me enough feedback that I feel good about this. And so we'll do both. We'll do both full reads or chapter by chapter reads on little pieces and brainstorming on that synopsis or anything like that. So all of those things are possible. There are some people who are critique partners who only exchange full manuscripts and everything else in between. The important thing is to communicate well with your group. And I like to keep in mind reciprocity, right? Like if somebody has asked me to read 5 novels for them since the last time they read anything for me, then I'm going to start to feel a little bad. And be like if I've asked them, can you read for me? Oh no, I'm busy right now, but here, read mine next month, So you want to I try to have that reciprocity in mind. Like maybe not if you read for me this week, I have to read for you next week, but like if I read for you now, then I hope you'll read for me when mine's ready in a couple of months, and to have that reciprocity.
So I'm going to lead into what we want the audience to know, which is, Julie, you are actually doing a CP critique partner meet cute. How do you work that, lady?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. So a couple of years ago, I really had a lot of writers that were on my newsletter writing to me and being like, "How do you find critique partners? How can I find a critique group? What do I do? I don't have anybody that I can trade pages with." And I was like, "I'm gonna just do a critique partner matching service." And I called it CP Meet Cute because it's like, I thought it was a fun nod to romance, a romance meet cute. Although it is for every type of writer, not just for romance writers. And I ran it with maybe like 100 writers the first time I did it. It was so popular that I've been doing it 3 times a year since then. So basically what I do is you sign up, you put your email in, and you'll get a link to a survey. And the survey, I'll ask you stuff like, what genre and age category are you writing? Is this a first draft or a revised draft? Is this your first book, or you've written 10 books? What time zone are you in? And do you want to meet weekly or monthly? It'll ask you all those things. And then I go in and I put people into little groups of like 3 to 5 writers that are a pretty good match of genre, age category, time zone, experience level, all of those things. And then you just trade 10 pages with that group. So you can get an idea for whether you're a good personality fit. And my hope is that everybody will find at least one person that they sort of vibe with in the group. It doesn't always happen. I definitely have people who will come back and run it a second time because it didn't quite work. But I get emails all the time from people who are still meeting with those groups from a couple of years ago and are like, now these are my best writing friends and we're so excited. And so it's been a really, really fun process. And we're doing something a little bit different this month that I'm considering doing going forward, which is we're going to have I'm going to do the matching this month, send out the cohorts at the end of the month. And then on November 1st, we're going to have a CP Meet Cute live and everybody's going to jump on Zoom. I'm going to answer questions and talk a little bit about best practices, sort of like we've done today. And then I'm going to sort people into their groups in using Zoom breakout rooms. And luckily I'm going to have my assistant there to help me because I think that's going to be a little bit of an administrative nightmare. But especially if we end up with a lot of people. But I also think it's going to be a lot of fun because getting on Zoom and getting to see people's faces and hear their voices is a really good first step in getting to know these potential new critique partners. So yeah, I would encourage everybody who's listening in, if you're thinking like, I need a critique partner, give my matching service a try. It's totally free. It's low time investment. You're maybe reading 30 or 40 pages from fellow writers and giving some feedback and seeing if you find some people that might end up becoming your good writer friends down the road.
Well, I want to put in a request, Julie, because I saw that you said you guys don't do chapter books. If you end up having people who want to do it for chapter books, I would love a critique partner for a chapter book. So I'm just going to say, at least one. So if anybody else comes across your desk, Remember me.
Yeah. I have really a specific reason for not doing chapter books, which is that they're so notoriously hard to publish, and like it's really hard to get the word count right and have the right language score. So a lot of people think they're writing chapter books and they're really writing a picture book, or they're really writing middle grade. And so when I have done chapter books in the past, and then I end up with a group of people who discover that none of them are actually writing chapter books. So I just sort of stopped doing it.
It's very specialty.
Right.
And I have found that I am going round in circles on things like the reading level, the word choice, the this, the that. Because you edited one of my chapter books and you said, you sound like a middle grade writer who's trying to write a chapter book. And I was like, Julie, I am a middle grade writer trying to write a chapter book.
Busted.
Thank you, Captain Obvious. I am. And so it's a skill you really have to practice. And I don't know anybody else doing it.
They are notoriously tricky, and they tend to be sold as series because the cost of the individual book is so low that the publisher, in order to make back any sort of money, needs to publish them in a series. And kids devour series at that age, right? I mean, how many chapter books did we read to our kids when they were that age, Abby? A lot. So many.
God, like every freaking Magic Tree House, Junie B. Jones. Yes.
And I still love those books. So they can be really, really powerful. I'll think about whether I know anybody who's writing chapter books that I can connect you with. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you came to talk to us today. See, Hank, I told you were going to love her.
I know. How's it been an hour already? Where did it go?
It goes by like that.
It went really fast. It was a lot of fun.
It did. So Julie, tell folks if they're interested in all of the stuff that we've talked about today and they want to get started with CP Meet
Cute.
Meet Cute. No, not CP. QP?
CP for critique partner.
CP, what am I thinking? I'm Meet Cute. Thank you. I'm overthinking it. CP Meet Cute. Where's the best place to get started? Where can people follow along for all the great stuff that you're up to? Tell people where to go. Where do they find you?
Yeah, so I'm very easy to find across socials because I'm Julie Artz everywhere, including my website, which is julieartz.com. And there's just a real quick sign up form that you use to join CP Meet Cute right there on my website. It's julieartz.com/CP-meet-cute. Maybe we can put that in the show notes or something. But you can also find it from the navigation for my website. And yeah, it'd be great if people joined. Registration closes October 24th, and then I will sprinkle fairy dust over the list and sort people into their groups. And then on November 1st, we'll have CP Meet Cute Live, which is going to be a lot of fun.
So much fun. We'll definitely update the show notes after the show is over. And we're also going to put this conversation out on our podcast channel on Friday, and we'll be sure to include all of that in the show notes for the podcast as well. Julie, I'm so glad I got to know you, and thank you for taking time to join us today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
See you guys next time.
All right.